Today we're going to talk about something most of us never really think about. What happens after a drug gets approved and hits the market?
It's easy to assume that once a medicine is on the pharmacy shelf, that's it. The tests are all done, the story's over. But is it really?
Well, it turns out the complete opposite is true. A drug's approval isn't the finish line at all. It's actually the starting line for a whole new, super important phase of monitoring.
And this constant watchfulness has a name. It's called post-marketing surveillance. It's basically the official way of saying, okay, let's see how this drug actually works out there in the real world when it's being used by millions of very different people in all sorts of situations.
So you're probably thinking, hang on, after all those intense clinical trials and years of testing, why on earth is this extra step even necessary? Shouldn't we know everything by now?
Well, here's the thing. Clinical trials, they're fantastic, but they happen in this perfectly controlled bubble. It's like a lab experiment, right? You have a very specific, carefully selected group of people. But the real world, wow, that's a whole different ballgame. It's messy. People have different diets, they're taking other medicines, they have all kinds of other health issues. And that's exactly where the unexpected stuff can pop up.
And that is why this ongoing surveillance is so crucial. It's our #1 tool for finding out things we just can't learn from those early trials. We're talking about spotting super rare side effects, the kind that might only show up in, say, 1 in every 10,000 people, or understanding long-term effects that don't appear for years. And of course, figuring out how a new drug plays with all the other medications people are taking.
Okay, so how do we actually do all this monitoring? It's not just one thing. It's actually a combination of 4 key methods that all work together. We've got spontaneous reporting, active surveillance, observational studies, and risk management plans. Let's break down what each of those really means. All right, first up, spontaneous reporting. This one's the most common, and it's all about people voluntarily sharing what they've experienced.
So who's doing the reporting? Pretty much everyone. It could be your doctor, your pharmacist, or a nurse who notices something. It could be the patients themselves who experience a side effect. Even the drug companies are legally required to pass along any reports they get.
Now, this system has some major pros. It casts a super wide net, covering huge numbers of people, so it's great for spotting early warning signs. But it's got its limitations too. The biggest problem is underreporting. A lot of side effects just never get reported. Plus, the information that does come in can be kind of all over the place in terms of quality.
So just waiting around for reports to trickle in? That's not going to cut it. To get the full picture, we need to be more proactive. And that's where our next 2 methods come in. They're all about actively going out and finding the data.
On one hand, you have what's called active surveillance. Think of this like proactively scanning huge databases, like hospital records or patient registries, to hunt for any red flags. Then on the other hand, you have observational studies. These are more like CSI-style detective work. If a potential risk gets flagged, researchers will set up a specific study to dig deep and figure out if there's a real link between that drug and a certain side effect.
And that brings us to our 4th and final method, risk management plans. This one is all about making sure the drug companies themselves are proactive from day one. It puts the responsibility squarely on their shoulders to be accountable.
Yeah, and these aren't just polite suggestions. They are mandatory, super detailed plans. They have to map out all the known and even the potential risks. They have to lay out exactly how they plan to minimize those risks for patients. And they even have to include a plan for gathering more data if there are any gray areas. It's really a blueprint for safety.
Okay, so we have all this data pouring in from these 4 different methods. But who's actually making sense of it all? Well, that's the job of the big regulatory agencies, like the FDA here in the US or the EMA over in Europe. Their teams are constantly sifting through this river of real-world information.
And believe me, if they spot a problem, they have real power to act. It could be something as simple as updating the drug's label with a new warning, or it could be more serious, like restricting who can use the drug. And in the most extreme cases, they can take the ultimate step, pulling the drug off the market completely.
So this whole system is incredibly powerful. But of course, it's not perfect. It definitely has its challenges. But the cool thing is, we're now seeing some amazing new technologies step in to help.
When you boil it down, there are kind of 3 main hurdles. First, as we mentioned, there's underreporting. Second, the data itself can be messy and inconsistent. And third, getting everyone on the same page globally is tough because every country has its own way of doing things.
But this is where things get really exciting. Technology is basically giving this whole field a massive upgrade. Think about it. Big data analytics can now comb through millions of reports and spot tiny patterns, things a human eye would almost certainly miss.
And then there's AI. Artificial intelligence is being used to automate a lot of this, flagging potential problems way faster and more accurately than we ever could before.
And maybe the biggest game changer of all is integrating everything with electronic health records. This lets us do near real-time monitoring. We're talking about a living, breathing, constantly updated picture of a drug safety across the entire system. It's incredible.
So let's bring this back home. Why does any of this matter to you? Well, because every single one of us plays a role. Whether you're a patient, a family member, or a doctor, you are a vital link in this global safety net. So if you remember just a few things from our chat today, make it these. 1. Drug safety isn't a one-and-done deal. It's a continuous process. 2. This real-world evidence is what doctors and patients need to make the best decisions. And 3. Reporting a side effect isn't just a small thing. It matters a lot. It directly helps protect everyone.
You know, it all comes down to this simple idea. The learning never stops, even after a drug is approved. That's what a real commitment to patient safety looks like.
So here's a thought for you. The next time you see a prescription bottle, think about this huge, invisible safety network that's constantly working behind the scenes. Knowing that this story continues long after approval, how does that change the way you see it?